It's Jackie McGriff,
And Courtney Shouse.
your host on today's Representation in Cinema podcast episode, where we're diving into the film Sinners. I'm the founder, director, and co producer for Our Voices Project.
And I am the outreach education facilitator and co producer.
And Our Voices Project is a production company that's committed to sharing the stories and lived experiences of Black, Brown, Indigenous peoples through visual storytelling and truth telling. Before we get into today's episode, we want to remind folks that you can listen to previous episodes on Spotify or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also learn more about our films on our website at ourvoicesproject.com. You can also learn more, or you can also be a guest on our podcast if you email us at info@ourvoicesproject.com. Please note that while we welcome all, we prioritize hearing from Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks, especially since this podcast is about highlighting the films telling authentic and multifaceted stories of Black, Brown, and Native peoples. Now, there's a lot to get into with this film as it's packed with so many references to history, Black culture, religion and spirituality, music, and lore. So, we're going to quickly introduce our guests and then head right into the discussion. Okay, so we have folks joining us in the studio and remotely because there's again a lot of conversation around this film. A lot of internet is a buzz with so many folks. So in the studio, we have Katira Poland. She is a published author, editor, copywriter, poet, speaker, founder and CEO of Love for Words, and the creator of National Black Authors Day. Happy to have you here, Katira.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
We also have Palestinian activist, writer, speaker, and educator Muna Najib. Welcome back to the podcast, Muna.
Glad to be back. Hey.
Joining us remotely is DJ Tego, a Raleigh-based DJ, my bad, who seeks to bring community together through music and dance, blended with collective education rooted in history and liberation-based politics. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, hello.
All right. So, now on to the film. For our listeners and viewers, Sinners is a horror adventure film directed by Ryan Coogler and also written by him, starring Michael B. Jordan playing twin brothers, Smoke and Stack, returning to their home in the Mississippi Delta in 1932 to start a juke joint. And reunited with family, friends, and neighbors, they gather a crew of entertainers, one of them being their younger cousin, Sammie, played by newcomer Miles Caton, who has an incredible talent that not only brings people together, but also attracts an evil force that dares to rip it all apart. The film also stars Wunmi Mosaku, Omar Miller, Delroy Lindo, and Hailee Steinfeld. So, if you haven't watched the film already, you can watch it now in theaters. We highly, highly recommend that you watch it in IMAX. And as of right now, I believe in theaters, it actually just left IMAX, but it will be back in IMAX on May 15th. So make sure you check it out. We encourage you to watch it and then come back to listen to our podcast. From here on out, though, we'll be discussing the film in depth. So, spoilers ahead. And as always, you have been warned. All right. So, a question that we ask all of our guests, first and foremost, what were your initial thoughts about the film? What immediately came to mind when credits started to roll? Katira, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so for me, it was a very emotional film. Is it okay for me to mention the scene that made me cry?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. This is a
It's
complete spoiler special. So get into it. Yeah.
So yes, so the scene where they were, I know there's a specific term for it. It's escaping me. Where they were in the circle and they were dancing.
Yes.
That was very powerful for me. I felt like it was a depiction of all that has been taken from descendants of, those who were enslaved.
Yeah.
And seeing the dance was just so riveting. Even though it was, it was an Irish dance, it just made me think of even the stereotypes that exist between the Irish and blacks, and some of the stories about that and the history of that.
Yeah.
And it upset me to the point of tears, but it also saddened me to the point of tears, and to also see how the people in the circle were being controlled, literally. So that was very powerful for me, very emotional. I didn't expect that, but the dance just really it was just very emotional for me. So overall, I would say the number one word from the movie is emotional.
Emotional. Yeah. How about you, Mona? Or Mona?
Okay, let's take it back to when before my initial thoughts, right? Because I think the first thing that popped up in my head when I was sitting next to Jackie in the theater in the very beginning of the movie was because I didn't know there was two Michael B. Jordans in this film. I didn't know anything, so I was like, I look at her, I'm like, there's two of them. Wait, what? I don't know where I was during because I did see the trailer. I must miss that part, but so that took me aback, and then I so initially just knowing that this is a Ryan Coogler film, that he and Michael B. Jordan have been working together for a very long time now, and Ryan Coogler, who is obviously has made quite a name and has proved himself in the realm of Hollywood as a director, as a Black director, but as just a phenomenal filmmaker. I went in like just open to anything, right? And I already had in mind that cinematography wise, like the actual visuals were going to be amazing. That alone, beyond the scene where Katira, you went like deep into the scene where they were doing the Irish dance. Well, there was also the scene where Sammie was singing, and I feel like that was that was like the lead up to that, right? Yeah. So I think that was kind of like the epicenter of the whole film, and we can. I feel like that scene alone deserves like a class on its own, like deserves an Oscar on its own. It's very, very interesting, very beautifully shot and done. And I think Ryan Coogler, and even during the interviews that they've been doing, this whole interview tour that they've been doing around this film has been very interesting. Been going through, watching them, and going down various rabbit holes with that one. But he's been very generous on this tour, explaining like how he's filmed certain scenes and what he was thinking and the basis of this movie and everything. And like, yeah, it's so initially I didn't really know what to expect. I knew it was going to be a really great film. It's going to be entertaining. But I can't wait to watch it again. Like, I feel like I need to watch it again, but I've been watching these interviews to like learn more, to gauge them, to gauge where he was coming from with this one. And but I think that scene in particular is like the heart of the film. And it really shows it's the music, the various cultures that kind of intertwine, the histories that are intertwined, the differences between the cultures and what connects them. And obviously, where Black music and Black history is the heart of all of that. So yeah, just beautiful, like breathtaking. I would say it's just a breathtaking film, on top of it being like just a crazy ride. So
right. DJ Tego, your thoughts initially?
I mean, 10 out of 10. I was literally just like, if this doesn't win every award on the board, I'm gonna be kind of mad.
Yeah.
Like I was like cinema, like me, like cinema, because I think you're just watching. I like this to say, you're just seeing a nerd work. You're just seeing someone who loves the art form, and it's like, I'm gonna be a master of this, and I'm gonna show you different ways of like, I can communicate these things through visuals, through music. It's such a musical movie where he just enraptured you with all your senses. It wasn't just the visuals, there's also the hearing. You could feel it, you could empathize, you could feel so much through this medium, and you could very clearly see he had a message and he delivered. Like, this was cinema. Like, I can't say anything else other than that. Like, this was cinema. And it made me want to like bet on myself in terms of art and like inspire others to like, yo, master what you do, use that light within you, and you can do amazing things. You never know where it's going to turn out, but when you're connected to your roots, when you're connected to who you are, what you do, your skills, talents, and passions, you can move mountains. So that was pretty much like my initial thoughts. I was like, this is cinema, man. Like it's cinema in my house. I don't care.
No, yeah, absolutely, all day, every day. Courtney, you had. So I was in a meeting And Courtney texted me because, of course, Courtney saw it. She has like it's in her mind the freshest. She's texting me all of these different thoughts. Courtney, what was your? I know you texted me a little bit, but of course, for our audience, for you, what was going through your mind at first?
Yeah, before I reiterate what I texted to you, I have to go back to Muna. Of course, Jackie, um, the first thing that sticks out to me is, oh my God, two Michael B's. Okay. I'm like in heaven automatically because I'm like, yeah. So yeah, I think my takeaway was, this is From Dusk Till Dawn meets like a side of Riverdance,
Mm-hmm.
is a side of, there's so many like references to different films and pulling that all together. But I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was this is this is a completely Black narrative. This is
Mm-hmm.
a story by and about Black folks culture, um, from that narrative, from that place. It is not white centered, it is Black centered all the
Mm-hmm.
way. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I really appreciate about this film is that there are so many nuances, that if you don't listen, or if you don't know, you're not going to catch.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is there is no time to explain, um, and it's not happening for your education.
Mm-hmm.
I think about when we see Annie in her hoodoo
Mm-hmm.
um, house, and she's doing her Yoruba prayer, and she says Asha, right? And if we miss that, then we don't know what that means. To say that prayer, or to work with those herbs, and to say Asha, to know that what she's doing is a ritual to invoke divine forces, um, contacting spirits. So I mean, there's a through line here, um, and that's just one of many subtleties, harkening back to the motherland, to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was a lot to be said for how these things are playing out in the movie and how they're normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody's like thinking it's strange. It's just day to day life, and it's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I thought that was a really nice way of um, presenting the culture, presenting those roots, presenting how we landed in Mississippi, 1932. And so I was really greatly, um, very, very much appreciative of that.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
mhm.
I definitely resonate with everything that everyone's been saying, especially like right after the film. And I kind of just was sitting there as the credits are rolling, and I'm letting things kind of wash over me. Because for me, my as far as like processing a movie, I will definitely sit there, and of course, because I knew there were going to be like a mid credit scene and there was going to be an end credit scene. But I still like to, even if it doesn't, I still like to sit there. And kind of just think through it, let it marinate. But then I need to talk about it immediately. And I just remember like sitting there and going, there's no like how to see something first of all original from a Black filmmaker, to know that there's so many narratives, right, that don't get the funding, that aren't pushed, that people kind of push off to the side. Watching that as a Black filmmaker, knowing how hard it is, even for people who are A-listers. We are constantly talking about Viola Davis's fight to get The Woman King made, and like just thinking through all the different hoops, right? That you just like, I mean, filmmakers already have to go through, but then to be a Black filmmaker and to have studios constantly telling you, that things, having an all Black cast or predominantly Black cast, and having, that's not going to sell. It's not going to sell tickets. People are not going to get in seats. And then you have something like Sinners that is packed, like with not only just a great story, but there's so much history. There's so much lore. Talking about Western Christianity and spirituality specifically. Um, there's just so many things in this. Thinking through the symbols, like I said, like Ryan Coogler is such a master. And only having made, right, like I was like, the first thing I saw by him was Fruitvale Station, and just seeing the storyline, the storytelling there, combined, of course, with Michael B. Jordan's acting abilities, and like coming out of Sinners, I was just like, basically, yeah, what DJ, uh, you know, Tego was saying about it being cinema. Like, it's everything that I love about films. It's everything that I got into filmmaking in the first place. It's everything, or points to everything and every reason as to why I got into filmmaking in the first place. It's definitely a film that packs a punch, several punches. It has a lot of symbolism. It's beautifully made. And it's by a Black filmmaker who got to do what he wanted to do on a project, and we don't see that often. So there's just like so many things coming together with that, and I was just like, we're going to be talking about this for years. It's going to be it is like, and I don't like comparing, and this is not a comparison, but like in the same way that we're still talking about a movie like Inception, right? Does the top is the top still spinning or not? Like things like that. There's so many different things in this film where we're no wonder like the internet is like a buzz with so many people getting into think pieces. And I saw someone else talking about doing a whole class on this film, is because there is so much to that. And I'm just like, yeah, that as a filmmaker, I'm looking at that and I'm going, that's what I want to do. Like that is what we set out to do. So yeah, it was fantastic. So I mentioned history before, and speaking, and of course, because with Our Voices Project, there's always some sort of educational component, but also like, how can you not with Sinners, with it being set in Mississippi, right, during Jim Crow. And so I really wanted to get into the history first, and then of course the many other scenes, that all of you talked about. We're definitely going to be getting into that a little later. But the first question that I had, and then Courtney, if you want to kind of start us into this, because again, digging into the history, this is where it gets, this is where I really want us to start. Is so Sinners, like I said, is set in the 1930s, or 1932 specifically, when many Southern Black folks had to work as sharecroppers to survive. Do you all think, and like I said, Courtney, you can give us the history and everything too, would this film have worked in any other time period? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to go.
Do you want me to weigh in now, or do you want me to? Do you want to leave it open?
We can leave it. We can certainly leave it open. I know, yeah, that you had like some notes just giving context to the history, but yeah, we can have. Here, well, why don't we do this? DJ Tao, I'll start with, or Tago, or Tego. Sorry.
You can just call me Tego.
Tego. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will start with you. Do you think? Because I also saw you shaking your head. You're like, would this film have worked in any other time period? Do you think?
No. I think he mechanically he structured it in such a way that like all the events happen for a reason. All the characters are the way they are for a reason. It's like, and the timeline, it works out pretty well, such that it only kind of makes sense within that period. Like Smokestack Twins, they went to war. What war did they go to, right? It's like this 1932. They had been out of Mississippi for 7 years. So go back 1925. What war was going on before then? Probably World War I. And we can kind of see like how that affected most definitely Smoke, and how like he's like, I'm a soldier. Like I take orders, and kind of how that characterization affected like how his outlook was. You see the scene with him and Annie where he's like, yo, out there in the real world is power. Out there is about what you can take, what you can break, and everything. Of course, his upbringing as well with Stack. But there are also other elements, like for instance, their time in Chicago when this is 1932. So we're seeing that prohibition, which ended in 1933 or 1933. we're kind of seeing like, okay, there's also that added pressure of like prohibition's probably on the way out. The mob, Irish mob and Italian mafia activity, that like St. Valentine's Day massacre and everything, right? Like
Mhm.
there's probably added pressure to come back to Mississippi, not just because of the kind of breadcrumbs that they might have played them to get out of Dodge like that, but
Mhm.
because with prohibition ending, sale of alcohol was probably going to become legalized. The amount of money it would be able to make on the black market with it was probably going away anyway. So it's like, okay, let's get out of Dodge,
Right.
make what we can down here. So it's like all those historical points kind of come together where it's like this makes sense for them to do what they did, especially with like the coinciding with like the Great Migration, with
Mhm.
Jim Crow,
Mhm.
with the Great Depression,
Yeah. Yeah.
19 like just getting into swing because of
Right.
1932 that ended
Right.
1939, which is like another kind of like pressure around everything, how that affects the political economy and how folks were used for labor, and most definitely with sharecropping, but also convict leasing. Like we saw the scene where they're driving past Delroy Lindo characters, Delta Slim, driving past the folks that he was
Yeah.
like part of that convict leasing gang with,
Right.
where in the middle of this scheme with sharecropping, where you know you lease the land but you still don't own it and you're still kind of working these conditions, you also have folks who have been incarcerated and are again more or less functionally enslaved. And it's like that
Mhm.
dichotomy where it's like not dichotomy but like that through line of like folks don't own anything in this environment,
Yep.
like truly own it. Kind of just adds to the impact of this juke joint is something we own, and it kind of just like tightens the story up. So all these things come together at this specific time. I'm like historical materialist in that way. I'm like, it happened for this reason because of this time. There's no other way to tell this story because of like it just couldn't have happened any other way. So like most definitely there's no other way it could have happened outside of like this period.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Anyone have anything to add? They'd like to add?
Um, I guess I'll jump in. So as far as like having a general like knowledge of the history, of course, like growing up, we know about the Jim Crow era and especially down south and um, slavery of the of certain times and everything that happened at certain points, what we were taught, what we weren't taught. But with this film, again, I really. So here's the thing. I'm gonna take it. I'm probably always gonna take it back to Mr. Ryan Coogler because why did he make this particular film, which I had no knowledge of
Mhm.
anything of his life personally, whatever. I just knew he was a filmmaker, and he's originally from Oakland.
Mhm.
Right, he has that thick Oakland
Yeah.
accent from his time too. But actually, like going down that rabbit hole, really, that's when I found out that this film was a very personal film for
Mhm.
him. It was
Mhm.
based somewhat loosely on his Uncle Jim, I
Yes.
believe.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the stories that he grew up and the stories that Uncle Jim would share with him and the blues music that Uncle
Yes.
Jim would listen to that he also grew up listening to
Mhm.
and then later on having more of an appreciation for, and that was a huge part of and this film was really a dedication to his uncle, as far as the whole, I guess,
I think he was saying something to. So I was watching an interview where he's talking about this, and he's saying how when he went away to school, like when he's in film school, and he's away from his family, he's missing a lot of things because of school, right? Like marriages, funerals, like all these different things. And so here is his uncle who's passing away, who's dying, and he's missing out on having those connections. So this like this leads into like a depression, and he's listening to a lot of the blues that his uncle connected him to. And so like that's at least the start of, or like the foundation of, as to why he chose to make this film. So
yeah,
yeah.
and that makes, I mean, that makes sense, and it makes the film even more poignant, I
Hmm.
think, for me, the fact that there was such a personal connection
Yeah.
there for him. So there's absolutely that history
Hmm.
of the Mississippi South,
Yeah.
100%, which I think many other, black filmmakers could have made a very similar, similar-ish type of idea uh, of a film kind of like this. And, okay, you can throw in the vampires. But I think with Ryan, with Ryan Coogler because of that personal connection.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a different sort of essence there. And yeah, so I'm just going to read a little bit about, there's a small article about that specifically, if I can
Yeah,
just like,
absolutely.
so like most reviews and articles about Sinners set in 1932 Mississippi and featuring some nefarious vampires descending on a local juke joint owned by brothers Smoke and Stack, mention how it's also an exploration of why many, like Kugler's uncle and grandfather, fled Mississippi. That aspect is certainly present in the film. Sinners does not shy away from the hardships of cotton picking, clan invested rural Mississippi, but that was not at the soul of his uncle's stories, nor was it what was on Kugler's mind as his mourning ritual morphed into this new artistic undertaking. So, yeah, I don't know. It just gives it. Um, it gave, at least for me, it besides going into this film and seeing it for what it is, learning that, I think just gave it more of that sentimental, even more emotional
Yeah.
value of the film,
Yeah.
for sure.
Right.
On top of the history.
Right. Right. Yeah. Right.
Can
Anyone?
I
Yeah.
can I build on that, Jackie?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So really building on what Tego had to say, obviously the setting is um perfect, but I do want to say with the question being, would this film have worked in any other time period? I think we do have to acknowledge that, I don't believe the Jim Crow era is over, right? I think it's morphed. I think, we still are facing, an evolutionized
Yeah.
Jim Crow
For sure.
era, right? But that's another podcast altogether. So I
Yeah.
think what we're facing here in Mississippi, 1932, the Delta, following the Reconstruction era, as mentioned, post World War One, the Great Depression, Prohibition, Jim Crow era, the heart of it, segregation. We have sharecroppers, tenant farmers, um, huge presence of KKK. We even have the Grand Dragon here in this movie. We are seeing that Black migration to Chicago, Detroit, New York, which is really called out in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But in the 1930s, right here in Mississippi Delta, as Muna was just citing, we are also seeing a musical revolution, which is later coined as the Delta Blues. And so we're seeing this whole birth of music, which is then later appropriated and considered white music, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um, the presence of the juke joints being a place where Black Americans could gather freely during segregation, away from white surveillance and control. And then we see how these juke joints operate as entertainment and a community hub. But they're also these underground economies that offer refuge, but they also have their own like unspoken codes of conduct, because we see how there's the white people can't really, don't let the white people in here, because it's going to lead to all kinds of other issues. What if somebody steps on one of their feet? What if somebody looks at them wrong? What if, right? um but the other piece that we didn't really talk about, that I think um lends a perfect setting for this movie, is that infusion of hoodoo, which is that African American folk magic that we see Annie um, right away. As soon as we meet Andy, we see that it's so integral to her character. And the reason why I bring that up is because that is something that was very much part of um, enslaved culture, and then we still see that when we go into the 1930s, post slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it was that piece that really helped our main characters understand
Mm-hmm.
what was going on with the dead alive people. And I think that without having that sort of hoodoo um, African American folk magic
Yeah.
aspect to it, I'm not sure we would have been able to move the movie along the way it did, because it was the trust that they had in Annie, and in sort of believing that, oh, okay, this is what we're facing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a big piece too. And I'm not sure that in a more modern setting
Mm-hmm.
it would have worked. Um, and certainly before, um, slavery was, you know, before emancipation, I don't know that that would have been
Mhm.
effective either, because I'm not sure we would have had a juke joint. Um, but the other piece too, that I just wanted to mention is that this also allowed our director slash screenwriter
Mhm.
to bring in real life, real things into the movie.
Yeah.
So we know Sammie's from Sunflower Plantation. This is a real place. And by 1930, the U.S. Census is telling us that 80% of the residents in Kahoma County, which is where Sunflower Plantation is, are Black.
Mhm.
And out of the 23,000 that are living there, 19,000 of the Black workers are working on local plantations as sharecroppers, farm laborers,
Mhm.
and most of the whites living there have Irish ancestry. We also yeah, so we also know that sharecropping systems, instead of paying wages to Black tenant farmers, former enslavers used vouchers or coupons or tokens to redeem at their plantation stores. We see that when they're at the juke joint, and we see someone paying with wooden coins.
Mhm.
But this was a way to keep emancipated sharecroppers in debt and poverty since the Civil War. And then, of course, we do see culture vultures. We see that,
Yeah.
with Remick as our antagonist. He appears on the scene. There's vultures circling overhead, and he plays the banjo. And the banjo, if you didn't know, is an instrument that originated in Western Africa, but it is also a uniquely Black African instrument. In the early 1900s, we see Irish Americans begin appropriating banjo into their rhythms.
Mhm.
And then also, Tego, I think we're right on the same track here, because we do see that reference to the Gandy dancers, which are the railroad workers who used traditional Black music and blues to keep the rhythm while laying the railroad tracks. Well, another fact is that Irish men were often charged with leading the railroad crews, made up of Black men who were subjected to the convict leasing system. So, another opportunity for appropriation. If you bear with me, I've got a couple more facts that I think are really interesting.
Okay. There's so, like I
Um,
said, there's so much history that's packed into
there's
this
so
film.
much that
Yeah.
I know that the term "haint"
Haint. Yeah.
was used quite a bit in the movie, and I'm not sure if that's a widespread term that we all understand. I did not. I did have to research this. Paint blue is referred to as a range of pale blue green colors that remind us of the water or the sky. And this color was used to paint the porch ceilings of homes in the deep south. But the origin of haint, it means haunt, and it
Mhm.
refers to ghosts or evil spirits. And the word haint comes from the Gula, which is people who were descended from Central and West African enslaved people who settled in Georgia and South Carolina. But the belief was that haints they walked the earth. So they were evil spirits that walked the earth.
Mhm.
They could come into your home through a door or a window, and they could disturb your life, your everyday life.
Mm.
But haints were afraid of water. So the doors, windows, frames, shutters, porch ceilings, they were painted this watery shade of blue to repel the haints, the spirits.
Okay.
So we do see
That's
in
why.
this way that blue color is a protection color.
Yeah.
So when we think back to the movie,
Yeah.
we see that Smoke is wearing blue. We see
Mm.
that Annie's dress is blue. We see that the hoodoo shop is draped in light blues and greens. Um,
And that's
and then
why.
finally,
Yeah.
I got one more. I got one
No,
more.
you're great. No,
and
I was gonna say something about haint. I was actually gonna say
yeah,
something about
go
haint.
for it.
Well,
Yeah.
because that's why, like Annie, while she's trying to assess, okay, what is it that we're dealing with here right now? There's a little bit of a hesitation, and why she's kind of like looking at, I think it's Omar's, it's cornbread. Like she's trying to just retain, like, as to, okay, are we dealing with a haint, right? And he doesn't come in. He's, he's asking to be
Yes.
invited in. So she's kind of trying to make that assessment, like, okay, I know it's something like spiritual, what is it exactly that we're dealing with? So that's there was that insight, because I was like looking at that and I was like, girl, I need you to figure out that's a vampire, please. So like during that scene, and she kept saying haint, and I had no idea. I don't know if the rest of you knew, what haint was, but I was like, I'm gonna have to look this up, because I'm not gonna bring out my phone in the theater, because I'm not one of those people. Yes, the small screen, and I'm like, listen, you can look it up afterwards. But what she's
I
talking.
actually,
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
actually, if you heard of the show P Valley, which is
I
actually
would have heard of
based
that. Yeah.
in Mississippi, that second season was actually taking a really like more supernatural, spiritual turn, and one of the main characters was saying like, it's just a haint, like they're seeing like a spirit, and I
Okay.
was like, okay, that's why I heard it before. It's really cool,
Ah.
but love the inclusion of the Gullah, like just
Mm-hmm.
make like culture in that.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
cool.
Yeah. That's
And that's exactly, Tego. But I thought, what just the depth of brilliance um, as a screenwriter, and then to be able to have the vision of your writing on the screen. But as a side note, the yeah, and the way that Annie does try to figure that out, because in a way you can see where these vampires could be haints, right?
mm-hmm.
But they don't exactly follow the lore, the African lore. This one, though, I think is going to kind of blow everybody's mind a little bit, and it kind of goes in line with periods in the movie where we transcend time.
Mm-hmm.
Where, especially like the being in the juke joint, and having the presence of the music that transcends generations.
Mm-hmm.
There are Emmett Till references in this film. So, for the sake of the podcast and for our listeners who might not know, Emmett Till was a 14-year-old African American boy who was lynched in Mississippi in 1955 after being accused of offending a white woman named Carolyn Bryant. Um, his body was recovered from the Tallahatchie River, tied to a fan from a cotton gin. He was murdered in a seed barn on the Sunflower River, which is the birthplace of the Delta Blues. And after he died, his blood was cleaned up off of the floor 2 times. And then cottonseed was spread over the floor to cover up the blood, because the stain couldn't be lifted. And so in the film,
Mm-hmm.
when the twins make the transaction with the grand the Grand Dragon, um, they ask Hogwood, why did he wash the floor? They asked him, was the floor washed? Why did you wash the floor? And then the brothers note that they are buying the barn, the land, and the gin, and everything else. Um, Further, Carolyn Bryant did confess in 2007 that she lied. At the time, she was referred to as one of the prettiest black haired Irish women that this one spectator had ever seen. Now, we did know the truth in 1955, because a community of black sharecroppers protected Till's family and black journalists who investigated the lynching. And as it turns out, Till's murder can be attributed to the lies of an Irish vampire, right? As we go back and look at it, as it were. So I think this kind of speaks to the way, Coogler sort of dives into the truth telling and the ugly, ugly history
Yeah.
of Mississippi Delta,
Mm-hmm.
um, even if it's transcending 1932. And those are some of the key takeaways that we see, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
when we're looking at what that time period holds for us,
Mm-hmm.
and how it works so seamlessly to bring us into that belief that these vampires are also feasible. I think it was very believable that, because we've created an environment where we've got the magic
Yeah.
working for us, we've got they're very much the belief systems of the people
Mm-hmm.
involved,
Yeah.
um, coupled by all of the oppression and the folks that are existing within these systems naturally and organically. Um, I thought it was a perfect setting.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah. And with that, and we'll get in a little bit more into like some more of the history later on, because I really want to talk about, you mentioned magic, so I really want to talk about the scene. And y'all know what scene I'm talking about. The scene in the juke joint, where we're seeing all of, again, because of Sammie's gift. And let me just say, like, first of all, that Miles Caton, that's his first role. That's his first role. And it's actually her, so the singer her, who convinced him to audition. He was on tour with her, opening for her, and she convinced him to audition for that role. And I'm telling you, like, that was that was the best advice, because he's just this incredible singer, this incredible actor. I was just like sitting like there going, oh my gosh, this is a newcomer.
Jackie,
Please
did
put
he
him in
play
all
the
the things.
guitar too? Did
Yeah,
play
he
the
learned
guitar?
it
He
for
did?
the part.
Wow.
He
Yeah,
learned it for the
sweet.
part.
He's
Yeah.
gonna be great.
Yeah.
He's going to be great. So, so speaking about that moment, so I really just want to go around the table and really, and also I think Tego, you had some things that you wanted to share specifically about that moment, just as a, as a DJ, as somebody, in that industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would love to hear everyone's thoughts concerning that sequence, that musical sequence. Yeah, for sure. Tego, I'll start with you.
Cool. Yeah, so like I was going online just trying to figure out like is there a list of all the musical genres and stuff that was included, and there's like nearly like 20, no, like over 10.
Mm.
So you have Mississippi blues, rock and roll, turntablism, hip hop, ragtime, traditional West African music, trap, G-funk, rap, Beijing opera, like traditional East African music, rhythms and blues, jazz and funk. So you
Mm.
see this through line through so many like diverse branches that
Yeah.
are able to come together at the trunk. And it's like he somehow was able to show like, yo, we're all still connected, we're all still so distinct, and you can hear almost all these elements all at the same time, and in a fashion where it's like you'd expect them to be discordant, but he's just a mix. Like that's just a blend, that's just him putting all these things together. And as someone who is in this hobby, profession, craft, art form where that's the purpose, you are able to visually see how these things come together as well as
Yes.
audibly hear it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, oh snap, like dude is like, I forgot, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Ludwig, the sound designer, the music
I think it's
composer for the whole
Joranson.
Sorensen, like,
Yeah.
yo, like cracked, like you're a crazy good. But like on some real stuff, it's so amazing to be able to see that and hear that at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And the way, again, he manipulated film to turn that scene into a music video of sorts and widen up the film. So it's like you're just seeing your jaw drops and your eyes widen as the field wide. It's just like, oh my God, like literally just blows your mind.
For
And
real.
we can even go deeper into the cultural anthropological kind of element of it, because I made a video about this saying that like for me this kind of like put this book together for me, Africanisms in American
Oh
culture,
yeah, we'll put that in the
edited by
show
Joseph
notes.
E.
Yeah.
Holloway. And
Yeah.
it's a collection of essays talking about like these are the elements of African culture that were preserved, transformed, remixed, and preserved within American culture, and not even just like Black American culture, but how it impacted all cultures because these
Mm-hmm.
things interact, bounce off each other, and impact one another.
Yeah.
And in the like section about music, like I just like went crazy with my highlighter on it. One of the first things was talking about how like culture is the product of interaction between the past and the present. That scene was
Mm.
a past, present, and a future all together, right?
Yes. Yes.
Its toughness and resiliency are determined not by a culture's ability to withstand change, which indeed may be a sign of stagnation, not life, but its ability to react creatively and responsibly to the realities of a new situation. So it's like
Jeez.
all these things are still connected, all
Yeah.
these things are branching off of each other, and it's the way it's produced, not just a product at the end of the day, that
Mm-hmm.
shows that connection. It's the way we conceive the music, the way we play it, the way we have that like that
Right.
rhythm.
Right.
Like even on Perline's scene where she's
Oh,
stomping
pale,
and
pale moon. Yo.
pale moon, son,
Yo.
Like the mere fact that you see old boy getting stomped out to the beat that everyone is still on. It's
Yes.
like that rhythm was in it's within all
Yes.
of us and connect us even
Yeah.
as time goes on, even as space seemingly disconnects us, but that root is still there.
Mhm.
And it's like it's one big tree. And like I also posted the chart that kind of shows like the development of this because again,
Right.
it's all connected.
Yeah.
Like all
What's
of
the
stuff
name?
is
We'll put it in the show notes. What's the name of the book again?
Africanisms in American Culture, edited by Joseph E. Holloway, because it's a collection of essays, so a bunch of different writers. But it's
Okay.
just like all this stuff is connected. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's almost like narratives and conversations we see where I try to disconnect it. I'm
Mhm.
like, you're just not living in reality because
Right.
it's all not the same.
Mhm.
We're not uniform. We're not identical because we can't be different histories and different times and different spaces. But we're still connected at the root,
Right.
and that's what really like matters. And that expands into a conversation of Remick feeling disconnected from his roots and trying so
Mhm.
hard to get Sammie because
Right.
you see he's like, I can connect to my roots and the
Mhm.
branches are coming later. I
Yeah.
want that ability, you know, like
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And he managed to connect all that visually as
Mhm.
well as like audibly. And
Yes.
Coogler,
Oh my gosh. The roof on fire was next
transformation,
flipping
like
level. Oh my gosh, Katira, what I see you like
Yes,
stick your
yes.
like yeah.
Yeah, that scene obviously was very powerful. So for me, it just shows that Sammie was able to transcend time
Yeah.
just like we are.
Mhm.
So, you know, like you said, Tago, there was past, current, future. What I really appreciated is there was an exclusion of twerking. There wasn't the exclusion of gangster
Right.
rap. Even though we're
Right.
taught, oh, we shouldn't be singing these lyrics, we
Exactly.
shouldn't
Right.
be
Right. Right.
doing
Right.
these dances, this is to be ashamed of. I mean, there's a place and time for everything, but in general, things that we create are labeled.
Mhm.
They're beautiful when we create them, but somebody gets a hold of them and tells us and the world, this is not beautiful unless it's in the hands of people who don't look like you. Even
Right.
though we created it, even though it
Yes.
came from us, it's kind of like it has to be validated in a way.
Mhm.
And then also, Tago, you were saying that what's produced is different, but it's all connected. So I even think about like how Sammie's father is like, that's a, you know, you're sinning. That's from the devil. You shouldn't play the guitar. Don't go with your cousins. Blues and the guitar are still part of our history,
Mhm.
and we've created beautiful things with that. So I don't necessarily think it's right to cast it as evil or say that we should not do it.
right.
Um, Obviously everybody has their opinions
Mhm.
about that,
Right.
but there's this underlying, still I believe in the black community, that if it's not of the church then you
Mhm.
shouldn't be doing it. But a part of who we are and how we create culture is outside of the church.
Absolute like the impact
So
of like secular music drew from
exactly.
spiritual music drew from secular music. To try and separate these it doesn't make sense. It's just not how we operate. Like no, and you can also see it in dance too. Like
Mhm.
I don't know how to pronounce it. I hope folks who are from this region, I think of the Ivory Coast, the Zhao Li of the Guro tribe, the one who's like in the whole edifice, like the
Mhm.
mask and
Mhm.
everything, and
Yeah.
like that footwork. And then you see the scene turn, you see like a dancer who like hip hop kind of, I think it was like crumping or something,
Mhm.
also
Hmm.
kind of reminisce like a little bit of the
Right.
moves too. It's just like,
Right.
yo, it's been passed down and
Yeah.
preserved. It's been passed down and preserved and remixed to the new and the old. Like it's yeah, beautiful.
Too quick. Oh.
Katira,
Oh.
oh, Katira, to go back to something you said that I think is very telling and meaningful, going back to one of my original comments too, is that the movie is told from that black narrative, right? So that piece inside the juke joint, the roof is on fire, and we're seeing the past and present and current state, and we're seeing it all. It is unapologetically blackness. Like that's what that is. And it nobody there is no permission needed, right? Like there is nothing
Mhm.
but black joy. And that is what, to me, that is what that scene emanated, right? It's not about um any surveillance. There's no permission. It's not about anything except living out what's innate to where you came from, and honoring that. And I
Mm.
think one of the things that's interesting is, I noticed right away we have Mary, in the Juke joint. She's biracial.
Well,
she's the
Octoroon.
only-
well,
She was
well.
Octoroon.
Yeah, Octoroon.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we gotta, because we gotta talk about the one drop rule because we're
Okay, we'll
'Cause-
go back to that. But let
because
me
it's
just make this one
1932.
point.
Because it's 1932.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, she's right. So they think they consider her
they consider her like
black, right? Based on the
passing.
drop rule?
I guess is that yeah, passing.
Yeah.
But she's like
But-
an eighth.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get into that one though, the interesting thing is the only ancestor that didn't show up was white. There was no white people. There was no white ancestor in that room. So even if we're gonna say she's not black, then
Mm-hmm.
even more so, there was no white
Yeah.
ancestor that showed up in that room.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure then if that was because that's an acknowledgement of the appropriation
Mm.
that happened around, that happens around
Mhm.
taking that music or
Yeah.
taking that ancestry.
Yeah.
Because the piece too, when I was doing some research, we do see Remick out in the yard, and we do hear them doing what we think is an Irish jig.
Mhm.
The dancing is Irish, but what I read, and I don't know if this is true, is that all of the music, however, was black music. So I don't think what they were singing was Irish music, even though they were dancing to it.
Well, no, there was definitely because he was singing an Irish folk song.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Was it? Okay.
Yes. There's a it's a oh gosh, I forgot. I have it written down somewhere. But because it's been all over TikTok and I can't get it out of my head. But I'm like, okay, guys, this has been, and it's just hilarious because I'm like, that tune has been in other films, like where I first heard it was like Sherlock Holmes or something, but like the fact that it's because it's so prevalent, like in the film, it's all over TikTok and
there's I just want was it two different because the scene where Mary comes out to the vampires, they're singing a song. And
they're singing a song that's also a folk song.
Yes,
yeah,
and it's a well-known. It's actually a really nice, well-known Irish folk song as well.
Because I know there's Will Ye Go Lassie
Yes.
Go, and then there's Rocky Road to Dublin.
Okay.
Mm.
So those are So they were definitely Irish. Folk songs.
Oh yeah, they're definitely Irish folk songs. Yeah.
And also a brief note, tying in to what we're talking about, the heritage of the character, the heritage of Mary's character is also, they're integrating the heritage of Hailee Steinfeld. So that is her heritage as well.
She's also Octoroon.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not just the character, they're actually integrating her background and putting that as part of the story and telling, bringing that in as part of it. And it's integrating her history as well as in that too.
Yeah.
I think a little
which is
bit.
kind of interesting.
Well, Remick is the actual character. He is fully Irish.
So
Is he
he was raised in England, but he identifies more with his Derbyshire heritage, so his Irish heritage.
Okay.
So because Jack O'Connell, who's the actor, he talks a lot about how happy he was to be in the film where he's fully celebrating like his Irish heritage.
As a vampire.
Well, as a vampire, right? As a vampire,
Yeah.
but he gets to sing and dance and and it so
okay. I'm fascinated by the way where all of this is going because I do want to circle back to that scene again because gosh, listening to all of you
and then I have 3 notes about that. But yes, go.
But to all you other brilliant folks and the layers of like all of those layers of Black music and African music and the evolution of that throughout time, which is incredible. It makes me, I wish we could watch the scene right now because I not only want to listen to it again, I want to like make those connections again, and also even the layers of the history there, including the Irish context within all of that, which I think there's definitely a connection to some of the actors, but there's a very real historical connection there, which I'm still learning about.
Yeah.
I also want to touch on the fact that well, going back to Mary first, because during that time, we look at someone like Mary. I look at someone like, Hailee Steinfeld,
yeah.
who I didn't know anything about this actress.
Steinfeld or Steinfeld?
I didn't know anything about her. This is
Yeah.
really my first time seeing her in a film, in anything. I didn't know nothing. Looks like a white woman to me, right? And then I looked her up. She's actually mixed with like Filipino on certain sides of her family with Filipino, and so I was like, I can see that. That I can see. I don't see any of the black phenotype.
Yeah.
Not seeing any of that. But again, Jackie, to what you were saying, because of the whole one drop rule, specifically during that time, she would have been, yes, very much passing. But had she been found out, she would have been lynched.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas today, that's just not the case. She's a white woman,
right?
She's a white woman in every context, especially now. But during the time, at that setting, and they call, and they know her. They grew up with her. The characters grew up with Mary,
right?
So they call it she's
family.
Yeah. She's family. They say she's family. This is
right, because he's from. This is one of the more funny moments where he's like, "Well, how did she get in?"
They're like, she's with us. We know her. We don't know you. White man. Where'd you come from? Yeah. So that's really, and they have every right to have their guard up and everything. So in context to Mary, I think that's important to highlight, because had she been found out at the time, then she would have been killed most likely. But also back to that scene, because there was all of the layers, which is fascinating. But then there was like also the Chinese dancers and the Chinese characters that was also part of that too, which I was taken aback. I was like, oh, okay, this is
we can get into the history of that as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just like, okay, Mr. Coogler, this is very interesting. And then going into the more present, I guess, like styles of dance and music and things like that. And then we also see that obviously at the later on, more at the end of the film, when we see Stack and Mary in their 90s get up, talking to Sammie and things like that. That was I like that. That was wild. It gave me a little Spike Lee kind of vibes with that one. But so I just kind of wanted, because I think there's even more layers to that scene that could really be touched upon.
Yeah, for me, that scene, like it was just like I had my my jaw was to the floor. I was like looking at this scene, and of course, like as she's saying, it connects us to both the past, and then when she says the future, in comes like the hip hop and everything, and then I hear, for me, like the way that I almost like started to break down was like I hearing a guitar riff, because one of the genres that comes from Black folks, right, is rock. And like growing up and being into rock and being told that, well, that's you're less Black because you love rock. And although I didn't know it at the time, that rock comes from us as well, like to hear that in a film and have that be acknowledged, like I was just like so moved by that. And then of course, like you're also watching, again, you're watching the camera just pan across the room. We're seeing all the different ancestors. We're hearing different music. We're seeing all these different dances, and then it shoots to the roof, and it's like, and the roof is on fire, and then it pans out like even more so outside of the juke joint. And so it's like, and then of course then you're getting the vampires, point of view, where they're also seeing, right, what Sammie's gift is doing. They're seeing the juke joint on fire. And of course it's symbolic, but at the same time, it's just, it's incredible. Like what Taco said, like that cinema, right? Like that right there is why, like, one of the many reasons why I became a filmmaker. Like, you can do so much in this medium, and it's beautiful. And he's saying so many things in this one scene. It was just so well done, so well shot. It took a couple of days, I believe, for them to shoot that entire thing, but they practiced it before they shot it. and also like the different, and I won't go too much in the weeds here because I am a tech nerd, and so we could just probably do a podcast just on the tech alone. But the way in which it's shot, to make it more of an immersive experience for people, it was shot on an IMAX camera and a Panasonic, which is like the widest aspect ratio that you can get while watching a film. And then but then also having it shot on an IMAX camera gives you more of the actual picture. So I just thought that was interesting. But then also too, to go back to, so I think Katira, you had mentioned it first, was about like how in church, secular music is labeled as devil music. Well, Ryan Coogler had a note about that. So in an interview, he talks about how it was all about money, because it was labeled as devil's music because those same people who would go to the Juke joint the night before would show up on Sunday and wouldn't have money to give to the offering. So that's
crazy.
Yo, I was like, I screamed when I heard that. I'm like, yo.
That makes so much sense.
That's crazy. Like that's
ushers.
Like close the door. Close the doors. So for those of you who are not familiar, so I'm referencing. Okay, so Marvin Sapp, who is he's a mega church pastor. Just go watch. Please go find the video because it is insane. Basically, he's giving the altar call, and so he's like asking people to give offering. And so of course offering is supposed to be something that's freely given, not something that's forced upon people. So he tells people, no, we're going to get whatever he's trying to, whatever the amount of money, 40K. Okay, 40K is crazy. 40K, and he's telling the ushers to close the door so that no one leaves. And no one leaves, then comes back and says after, right, the internet blew him up and like basically dragged him. He was like, oh no, but like anyone could just leave. And I'm like, then why would you close the door? That doesn't make sense. So yeah, so this whole thing about like it being devil's music and the fact that it's because they didn't have money left to give to offering was, it was a lot. it was a lot to get. And I forgot what the other note I had. Just specifically about that scene, but I just thought that was interesting.
Sticking on that point about sort of like that contradiction within the church, or like what is seen as holy versus what's labeled as devilish and everything. I found it visually interesting. I think when Sammie's dad was kind of telling him like, hey, you're going to be attracting the devil with that music. You better be careful or whatever. And I was kind of like, his eyes looked like really shine, like looked funny. And on my second watching, I was kind of like, it kind of, not to say that the dad was a vampire, but I feel like there's like a specific lighting choice might be bugging, where it's just like, okay, you kind of got that glow in your eyes a little bit too. So is that kind of him, like Coogler kind of saying like, hey man,
go ahead.
We got stuff going on in the church as well. Let's not all be like everything is 100% wholly upright within these structures as well, because how many people have experiences where it's just like, all right, like,
Right. Katira, I know you were like,
I was gonna say I thought that Perlene also had the look in her eye when she was performing on the stage. I kind of got that from her. And then of course when she didn't want to take the garlic, I was like,
the way that we were all yelling in the theater, like, girl, just eat it, right. Or do we have a problem?
and then the other connection I was thinking about is like the snake.
Yes.
Like, because snakes can have that kind of glare to their eye. Yeah. So I know one of the questions was about foreshadowing that, and I would say yes to that. I'm sorry to skip ahead.
No, you're okay.
But it made me think about the venom of snakes and the venom of vampires. So I definitely think that was a foreshadowing. And then also, that was the scene where I think it was Smoke said, Sammie stacks back because he don't know how to watch his own back.
Right.
And that made me think about his connection to Mary, and essentially she's the one who killed him, even though that was like someone he loved, who loved him. So I think the snake was foreshadowing for many things in the movie.
Yeah.
Katira, what do you think about so since we started talking about the secular music and the role of Christianity, I think what's interesting to bring up too is that I mean, Africans were not Christian. I mean, that's something that colonialism did,
Yep.
right? And so in that way, it was forced assimilation,
Hmm.
which is interesting because there is that theme too. Um, do you think there was some conscious commentary
I
there?
I
Like,
definitely. Oh, go ahead.
no, yeah, please.
I was gonna say I definitely think that was intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So even like
Mm-hmm.
when Sammie started praying, they started praying with him. I was
Yes,
like, we
yes,
don't
yes.
care. We
Yes.
know the prayer too.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they
It was
got
a part of
they
the
got that through colonization.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a part of the plan to keep them, um, I
Oppressed.
guess
Yeah.
oppressed.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So I definitely
I,
think that was intentional to answer that question.
There's
and I
there's
think
oh
you have the juxtaposition of Christianity, and then you have Annie, right?
Right.
Who's showing us that you have that African, but
It
who saved them? Annie saved them, right? It's not. It wasn't the preacher.
that,
well
So
okay.
No,
go
that's
ahead.
true.
go
That
ahead,
is true.
go ahead,
No,
Jay.
Yeah.
no.
I was going to say because oh my gosh there's so many
I
so
know.
many
I got
different things
another.
that I was like I just want to make sure we're also not missing this because with symbols, right? When you guys were talking earlier just like a few moments ago about when we're talking about close the doors and everything like that, and how Christianity sort of like operates in this whole we're supposed to be serving the people, but really like there's all these like different things around especially American Christianity. So someone brought it to my attention, the first scene when we're seeing Sammie driving into what the scene that would be repeated later when he's arriving at the church and he opens the doors. Now my thought process is like if you see someone bloodied and beaten at your door and your first response is to use it as part of your sermon,
That's nuts.
that's kind of crazy. And then but then someone now the thing that someone brought to my attention was, do you remember like the flashes like in the beginning, there were flashes of scenes? So at that same point a flash happens, and that flash is Remick. So it's comparing the pastor to Remick in that situation. They're two sides of the same coin.
Yep.
And I just thought I was like, I forgot about the flashes. Because I was like trying to make it, because it's my first time watching it. And so I'm like, wait, what's the random like flash that we're getting in the beginning? Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna mention, going back to hoodoo and voodoo, that those were villainized.
Yeah.
We were taught that was taboo, especially voodoo. I'm sure hoodoo, but I know voodoo has a very negative connotation. I don't know if it's changed much, but that was part of again, oppression. So we don't want you to practice this. We have Christianity for you. So that came to mind when I was just thinking about, things that were taken from us and replaced with what we were taught was the right way.
And there's a two-part documentary that I remember watching like years ago that was produced by PBS, and it's specifically about the Black church, but it talks about how when Black Americans, when they're getting Christianity like forced upon, that what happens is very interesting. There's the mix of those same practices, the African practices with Christianity, which is how you get like something like in gospel with the call and response, and then the way that they're praising, right? That's how you get gospel. So it's just this very interesting thing of like, as it's being demonized, as it's being told that this is paganism, this is all these things, right? What happens though out of that is you're getting gospel, something that is like about praising God, but at the same time though the roots of it are in African spiritual practices. So I just thought that, and I'm saying this as a Christian, like that I thought was very I thought that was very interesting. So that was my other note about that.
No, that's definitely something brought up in this book again. It's like no one came as a blank slate. Like these things again were mixed together, remixed, and turned into the things we see today. Like there's a reason why those runs and like those musical scores in the church, the ones I can literally just like you know they're about to go crazy on it. And you have a praise break for like 10 minutes straight.
For real.
It's like there's a reason you don't see that in other churches.
Mm-hmm.
Like
you go to the white church, they're not doing that. I'm telling you that right now.
Like it is not the same.
What are you trying to say about the Catholics?
y'all cool, but like
not a lot of electric guitar.
Courtney is not. Courtney is not a Catholic. Courtney is not. No,
I was raised. I was raised. But I do not. I am a former. Yes, no.
You know, most definitely like that. That's what again Delta Slim was saying before Sammie went on with that scene. He was like, you know, Christianity, that was something that was imposed, and even in that imposition, there was that remixing and that like coalescing with what came before and turns into what it is. But the blues, that's something that came from home, and I think for me, that's what really made the scene like just the thing that came that brought tears to my eyes, because he was like, yo, what we do with this music that makes it so coveted, that makes it so magical, that makes it so powerful, it's what came with us. It's something that comes like again from those deeper roots, that soil that like touches everything that we do. And it was so cool to see like it's deep, it's big, like there's no other way to describe it.
Yeah, Tego, it's like the only time where there's no oppression on the people is like when the music is playing, like when that scene happens and the music is playing, like it's the only time. And you know, we see that at the end of the movie when he's like, hey, that was the best day I've ever had. Like that's
all trauma aside, best day of my life.
Best day of my life.
I almost died. I watched all my friends get killed.
But for a moment they were free. For a moment.
And that second post-credit scene where Sammie's talking and remixing again into blues, this little light of mine. It's like his light shined so bright in that room, it literally blew the walls off. It burned the roof down. Like that's something that's his gift. That's something within him and his tradition. And it's that bigger and that deeper that like nothing can contain it. It brings everything together and nothing can contain it. And that's why like this conversation had me thinking about that second scene again. Cause I'm like, you know what? He literally burned a room down. Which is how powerful that was.
Burn the house down. Yes.
Like,
yeah. Katira, were you about to say something?
I was, not to dampen, but the one thing that comes to mind for me is when Stack he's turned and he says, "This isn't a juke joint. This is a slaughterhouse." So for me, it's like we have this false sense of freedom. When we get these things that are ours, what happens to them?
Yes,
they're destroyed.
Right.
Sometimes by us, sometimes by others.
Yeah.
But it's still a false sense of like, yeah, we had it good for about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But
Katira, it's not destroyed by blackness. It's destroyed by white supremacy. And I think that was also a current that runs through the movie too. Like we are all suffering under white supremacy, white, black, Chinese, it doesn't matter. We are all suffering. So there was a part of me that did feel for Remick, even though, you know, he did have ulterior motives.
Yeah, for sure.
There was definitely a piece where, you know, he had also experienced some sort of oppression, whether this is over in his motherland or, you know, other things. But there's this through line where nobody's benefiting under the system. I mean,
can I?
And go for it.
I just want to know. I'm really so deep in thought with all of this because I think I'm kind of coming to this realization, speaking on the layers of, and I think colonialism is definitely part of that, what you're touching on, Courtney. But the theme of being saved, especially in this film, and what is it that does save them? Because I think Katira, 100% when you were talking about Annie. Sorry. Who the hoodoo voodoo?
Annie.
Annie. Because Annie absolutely is the one who is trying, and the most successfully trying to save them. Right. She's the one who figures out that it is vampires that is attacking them. That is they're turning into vampires. She's the one who knew exactly what they needed: the garlic, the silver, the steaks, whatever it was. She's the one. I mean, you could tell she was the most spiritually in tune person there. besides, we got to talk about the Choctaw who
Yo.
made,
Right.
okay, we're gonna get to that in a second. Okay, yeah, who made just a little bit of a little appearance and then poof, vanished. But that appearance like really spoke volumes because
Set the tone.
it really did set the tone. Yeah. And who were the characters, the people that I think really knew best as to what evil was encroaching, no matter the I guess the intent or why this evil was there. Because I think, Courtney, you're right. Remick definitely had if you want, he had alternative motives, and also I guess if you want to add the layer of like a sympathetic villain and why, you know, that sort of thing, because the Irish were also, you know, historically were colonized by the British and dealt with that, and so there's definitely that connection as well. But yeah, this idea of what does it mean to be saved, and I think that scene where we're seeing Sammie and Remick, and he's kind of like killing him, baptizing him. I don't that
Right.
that,
Right. I was like,
that grapple, you know, back and forth.
What is
Yeah,
that?
It was so funny because there are some folks on my second viewing who were like, "Oh my God, you had to say the Lord's Prayer," and then Sammie started saying the Lord's Prayer, and they're like, "Yeah, you got it. That's how you do it." And then Remick started saying it, and it was quiet. I was like, oh, and then like the dark baptism, and I was like, oh, I was like, like this. It was like, oh my God. Like it was crazy with like just the conversation around this type of stuff about like, but oh man, like I can't even articulate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, side note: who doesn't want to see the Choctaw Vampire
Listen,
Hunters?
okay, listen. I gotta say something. I gotta say something.
It's gonna be so good. Who doesn't want to see that?
Listen, let me direct. No, I'm kidding. I just want. We will. I first of all, the fact that Remick's entrance into the film is literally coming like he's coming from above, like into frame, and he's running.
Yeah.
From them. So I'm like, what were the Choctaw doing for you to be running like hell like this?
It was the sunlight too.
Well, it was the sunlight too,
right?
But also like
burning.
he's right. He's though again.
If they catch me, I'm cooked.
Right, literally.
Yeah.
Literally. So that's why I'm like, I need a prequel. Okay, I need the Choctaw Vampire Hunters. I need to know. But yeah, but also. I did have a question, and I know Courtney has the answer to this. With seeing the Choctaw, I did for a moment because I remember talking to Muna about this after the film. Was like, why is it? I mean, we're all here for Indigenous representation. Let's go. But why did we only see them for a short period of time? And Courtney actually has a historical.
It's funny you should ask that question. I also do want to point out that, and I know Kataira, you pointed out that, you know, hoodoo and voodoo was villainized, and hoodoo, as it got intermixed and intermingled, was made up of not just an African origin, but also Native American origin. So there was a lot of mixing and mingling there. But if we think about, again, because of our brilliant director, screenwriter Coogler here, I believe that the Choctaw, if we look historically, their ancestral homelands are in Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. So in the 1830s, we have the Choctaw being forcibly removed from Mississippi to Indian Territory, which is now present-day Oklahoma. And they were removed through the Indian Removal Act, which was in 1830. We know that time period as the Trail of Tears. There were many Trail of Tears, but this is one individual Trail of Tears. And then some Choctaws did stay. Some of them avoided removal. Some did receive land allotments. Some did have some special exemptions. But by 1932, there was a small Mississippi band of Choctaw. They were living in poverty. They had limited access to education and healthcare. They were also suffering under the systematic discrimination of Jim Crow. But they also were living as tenant farmers, sharecroppers. They were working on plantations. So my thought was they were introduced to the movie just long enough to show that their culture had some sort of integration, but quickly displaced, just like in real life, in history. They were not participating in society. They were not part of the general stores. You know, we clearly see the delineation and the segregation where we have the Chinese moving freely between both, but this is not a place for indigenous people. Majority of them were removed from that area, from the Delta, but those that were left did settle in the Delta. So I think it was just a matter of let's acknowledge that, I mean, these were the original peoples of the land. So there's going to be, especially when we're talking about enslaved people who are also connected to the land. And then we talk about European colonialism and settlers. They are everything in their power to be removed from the land. I mean, they work the land because it's money, but they're not connected to the land.
Right.
So I think there's that connection. And I think that ultimately they did know how to defeat vampires. But I think when they were like, all right, you're on your own, we're out, like peace, like, you know,
we tried to tell you. We tried to tell you, but
we're
out.
We're not kin here. Like, it's clear that you ain't got nothing for me here. So we're out.
You don't want us around. So we're out.
And here I'm thinking they were just the most reasonably minded people and knew what was up. And
they are. I think they are. But at the same time, I think it's and when you know what really tipped me off to this kind of opinion was when I was watching the film. We see the white woman when Remick lands on the door. I'm getting chased by Indians. She's like, well, there's no Indians here. There haven't been Indians here forever. Like, right? So you know, she kind of tips us off to that time period. Like, why would you be being, you know, why are you being chased by Indians? Why are Indians chasing you? And so, you know, it just kind of sets the stage for, you know, this historical accuracy that I'm just really loving in this film. That, again, makes us really able to believe what we're seeing. So that's kind of where I was going with that hypothesis.
Just real quick. Ryan Coogler, that does not mean we still want that indigenous vampire slayer movie.
We need that.
Please. Okay. Just in case if you ever get, you know,
for real.
That's all.
Looking good.
Yes, seriously. I need the Choctaw Vampire Hunter movie now. Okay. So I think what we're going to have to do is obviously make a part 2 because
we haven't even
I think we're already in 2 parts. I mean, this is going so well. I love this.
Listen, there are so many things that we did not get to.
7 hours.
Right, exactly. Movie. Right, exactly. We didn't get to first of all, Grace that whole scene with Grace, we didn't get to, I mean, of course, and also talking about the Chinese American presence in the Mississippi Delta. I mean, there's so much that's in this film. So
I mean, the Robert Johnson myth.
Oh yes,
it's like such a core of the story. The whole Robert Johnson myth too.
Okay, someone explain to me what that.
So Robert Johnson, he was a musician. I think it was guitar, right? Obviously, guitar.
Yeah.
So he wasn't very good at it naturally. So the story is that he traded his soul to get that talent to play the guitar as well as he did later on in life. And I don't remember if he was connected to hoodoo as well.
He died at 27, like a lot of famous musicians too. So it's like part of the core of the story is like Sammie's kind of the Robert Johnson stand-in. And it is like, that's a whole thing. And that's kind of the core of like that angle of the story. Which is like, that's a great one to dive into later too, especially somebody that knows that part of the music well.
And I think it was a great connection that Buddy Guy was the older Sammie as well. Like it just shows how much Sammie transcends, like, you know, and that
absolutely,
you know,
and also we got a plus size dark skin love interest. Like, come on. Let's
and we didn't get a chance to talk about how sexy the movie was. It was
so beautiful. But yes, but also Katara.
Two Michael B. Jordans.
No, that's not what I was going to say.
No. Please, Katara. Katara, what I think I see, I think I know exactly what you're talking about, but please, for the audience.
I said, what is all this reference to oral sex?
Listen.
I'm sure it was happening,
talking about,
but I'm pretty sure they were not talking about it.
Talking about the real eaters.
This way.
You know what?
What is that about?
I had a theory on that. I had a theory
Yeah.
because my theory is that it was to combat the stereotypes of black men as being aggressive, sexually aggressive.
You know what though, and also to that point, because here's the thing. I was like, man, y'all are really committing to this. But it's also the but wait, hold on. It's also in more ways than one, but also the fact that after 8 o'clock for Perline, she goes ham on Pale Moon. I'm like, so someone said, I'm like, so
correlated.
Right. So here's the thing. This is what they took from that, and I was just like, you know what? I agree. Hell yeah. Like the thing is that so the pleasure of black women is linked to things working for everybody.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what? Yes, absolutely. You know what? You nailed it. Yes, but it's just like, but going back to real quick, and then we will definitely have to do part 2, for this. But like going back to, again, Annie, someone who is not seen as someone who is conventionally beautiful, or even given that role of being the love interest. Right. Yeah.
I was just going to counter that. Well, not counter it, but say that in our time, there was this obsession with the chemistry between Mary, what's her real name, and Michael B. Jordan.
Right. I didn't care about that.
And it was completely ignored the fact that he had a whole nother love interest. But because we're accustomed to seeing fair skin with darker skin, etc., that's the buzz about the sexual tension in the movie. So.
But you know what? After the movie came out, like at first I was seeing, like on the press tour, I was seeing this whole push for like Hailee and Michael. Yeah. But then after the film, that's when you starting to see more marketing around Wunmi and Michael. So there's
high key.
Because there's
that was
high
way
key.
More believable.
Because,
I'll tell you that.
Right. And because there was also that whole, like, there's that street, I forget who does it. They're like, they go on, they do these street interviews and they ask couples, like, how they first met. And so when they did the one with Wunmi and Michael, right, it was to promote the film, obviously. But their chemistry on the screen and off screen is just like nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just also going to point out Perline. I think her real name is Jamie.
Yes,
even
Jamie.
her.
Even her.
When she came on screen at first, I was like, who is this?
Right.
I was like, she's
gorgeous.
The fire that they brought on the screen was just like, it was magnetic. Mm-hmm. Every moment they were on the screen is like, you just can't tear your eyes away from them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Perline, she's also someone who is, she is gorgeous. Mm-hmm. She's somebody who, again, right, given how movies have been, right, that's usually the person that is often seen like as the traditional love interest. But then we have someone like Annie. Like I was just like so like excited about that. Because we don't get it.
If y'all wasn't knowing since Lovecraft Country.
Oh my God, Lovecraft. She stops the show every single time. Like she was incredible.
Great actress
in that film.
Actress.
Yeah.
Great actress.
I do want to add too that Annie as a love interest, as a main focal point, I think she transcends race also, and can speak to, being that representation for women in a lot of different ways. I was, immediately identified with her also on a lot of levels, for her strength, for, her size not being representative of what that ideal American beauty is.
Her hair.
Her conviction.
Her hair for
is
sure.
aligned.
Yeah. Katara,
her hair, her natural hair,
right?
Everything.
Yeah. Exactly.
What more? I feel like you had more to say.
I'm just agreeing with what you're saying, Courtney. Her hair, her size, and also just pointing to the fact that she's not even typical plus size, like 12,
Yeah.
14.
Yeah.
She's probably, I don't know, maybe an 18, 20. So even the diversity of plus size,
Yes.
she's on a different spectrum.
Yes.
And I just, obviously appreciated that. And even her dress, she didn't have the, fancy frills,
Cutesy,
but that didn't make her any less appealing.
No.
She was
Her
just
presence.
Her presence.
exactly.
Like her presence as well. Like that scene where she was talking to Smoke. It's like, you don't know how much I've been praying for you.
Yeah.
You don't know how much this hoodoo has been working to protect you. And you can literally hear the sound just like swell up.
Yes. Oh, the sound.
Like, you're not messing with someone who is like not someone to take as a joke or
right.
This is someone who like stands on business and is just like just an amazing character. Like just an amazing character.
Yeah, I think that's believable. And I think that if you had a white woman back there at 1932 talking like that, I wouldn't believe that. I wouldn't believe that. We weren't cut from that same cloth.
Yeah.
I would not believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Just putting it out there.
Anyone else have any other quick thoughts before we wrap? And because I would love to see you for part 2, because there's so much in this film.
Part 3, part 4.
No, just part 2. Just part 2. At that point, it becomes just it. Yeah. No.
Extra long.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to start with why this movie is so sexy. We got to start right there. And right into it. But I besides I think and we got to also, we haven't touched upon like the whole idea of what makes a vampire film, right? Because the traditional vampire film and why vampires are usually sexy, I guess, in their own way, and what makes this film a sort of a different vampire film.
Interview with the Vampire, y'all. Watch Interview with the Vampire.
That whole
Interview
thing.
The series. The series
goated.
Yeah, and I would love to touch upon actually more of the romantic these relationships between Stack and Mary and then Smoke and Annie, because they're both really powerful and interesting in their own ways.
Yes.
Which is so, and it's just it boggles the mind that it's like this one actor playing these two characters with these two different, very different women.
Incredible.
And what they kind of represent in this film, and the vulnerability behind all of that. So
okay, so real quick, shout outs for everyone. Do you have any shout outs, any upcoming projects, events, anything like that? Of course, we will put all this information in the show notes for our listeners and viewers to be able to access later on to support you. But so we will start with Tego. Do you have any upcoming events, projects, anything like that, or where people can find you?
Upcoming events and projects. I mean, hit me up on IG at DJTAGOE. Same way on TikTok. I'm in the planning phase right now, but hopefully this summer is going to be a time. Going to be burning the roof down and my own type of stuff. So in due time, this movie definitely reinvigorated me in my artistry. So hopefully, shout out Coogler. Shout out Coogler.
Absolutely. Katira.
Yes. So I am an essayist for the In This Moment chapbook. So the launch takes place on May 19th. I'm the essayist for Christopher Coles. He is he's an interpreter, has the highest licensure you can possibly have as an ASL interpreter, but that is the 19th at 6:30 at George Eastman Museum. And I'm also co-hosting a masterclass, Write, Edit, Publish, for those of you looking to publish a book, on June 7th at 1 p.m. and that is Zoom. You can visit my website at love4words.com for more information.
Awesome. Where can they find you on social?
At Katira Poland on Instagram. I'm the only Katira Poland on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. Also, Katira Poland on Facebook, and I have a Love for Words business page on LinkedIn and also on Facebook.
Awesome. And Muna?
Let's see. I guess I'll plug that the Encampments film is going to be shown tomorrow at the Little Theater. Yep. So please, come show up for that tomorrow and also Saturday. Anytime that there's Any sort of documentary or film based on the Palestinian movement, please be on the lookout for that. Usually the Little Theater is more than supportive of showing those types of representations in films when they're kind of hard to stream and come across. I am currently trying to do rallies and organizing with Speak Up For with the number 4 Palestine. We have an Instagram page on there. Yeah, and anytime Our Voices Project is more than generous to have me work alongside Jackie, Courtney. Yeah, I'm about it. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. We'll definitely have to have you back for part 2. And in other future films, of course, if there are any films that again center Black, Brown, or Indigenous peoples, if there's a film that does that for, and then that you really enjoy, and you're like, everyone must know about this film. We got to talk about this film. Definitely let us know. We'd love to have y'all back. And I would thank you all once again for agreeing to come on the podcast and talk about this film. And I want to thank all of our guests, of course, for, guests for coming. And then also to our listeners. We will put everything, all the info that was shared here, and where you can find each of our guests in our show notes. To our viewers and listeners, thank you again for your support of Our Voices Project and the Representation in Cinema podcast. See, all that talking, I'm just getting I'm getting tongue-tied over my words here because we talked about so much in this podcast today. Packed. This is why we're doing a part 2. Anyway, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. You can go visit our website at ourvoicesproject.com for more information about what we do. You can also sign up for our newsletter there to be the first to get notifications about new podcast episodes and also about projects, because again, we are a production company. We do have a few films out there, as well as films that we're working on. We're always working. You can listen to this episode and others under Representation in Cinema on any of the platforms. And then again, that you listen to your favorite podcasts, or you can listen to all of our episodes on our website at ourvoicesproject.com/podcast. This has been Jackie McGriff and Courtney Shouse, your hosts for this episode of Representation in Cinema of Our Voices Project. Thank you again for listening.